You won't need keys after rehab, Mom. Todd Andrews said it while standing beside a cardboard box in his mother's room at the rehabilitation center. He didn't look at Wanda when he said it. He was winding the cord around her little bedside radio, pulling it tight enough to bend the plug. Wanda sat on the edge of the bed with her aluminum cane between her knees. She wore gray slacks, a blue cardigan, and the flat black shoes the physical therapist had approved. Her left hip still felt stiff where the surgeon had repaired it. She could walk the length of the corridor without help now, provided nobody rushed her. "What do you mean I won't need keys?" she asked. Todd put the radio in the box. Golden Pines uses a keypad at the entrance. Staff handles the apartment doors. Wanda watched his hands. When Todd was a boy, his hands had always been busy when he lied. He would pull loose threads from his shirt or straighten objects that were already straight. At 40, he still did it. Now he was lining up her bottles of hand lotion as if the labels mattered. "I'm not going to Golden Pines. We've been through this." "No, you've been through it. I haven't." Todd gave a tired little breath. It was meant to sound patient. Wanda had heard that breath from worried sons and exhausted daughters for 30 years while working as a private home health aide. It usually came just before someone made a decision for an older parent and called it kindness. "You can't manage the house alone," he said. "Not after a hip fracture. I managed other people's houses while they were dying. That's different. It usually is when it's somebody else's mother." Todd stopped arranging the lotion. His jaw tightened. Wanda held out her hand. "Where's my key?" The question had been bothering her since breakfast. Her coat had arrived from home the day before, but the key ring wasn't in the pocket. The ring carried the brass key to the front door, a smaller key to the back porch, and a red plastic tag from Andrew's Lock and Key. Eugene had made the front door key himself. Todd looked toward the open doorway. A nursing assistant pushed a linen cart past, without glancing in. "The house has been sold," he said. The room seemed to go quiet, though the television in the lounge was playing a game show and someone down the hall was calling for a nurse. Wanda kept her hand out. Todd spoke more quickly. "It was the best decision. Jenna had a buyer who could close fast. The carrying costs were ridiculous and the place needed work. We couldn't leave it sitting empty through the winter. You sold my house. We handled it while you were under the medical authorization. You had permission to talk to the surgeon and to manage what needed managing. No. You had permission to make medical decisions if I couldn't speak." Todd pressed both palms against the top of the box. "You were on pain medication. The pipes could have frozen. The insurance company was asking questions. We had to act." Wanda stared at him. Her first thought was that he had misunderstood something. Her second was that Jenna had pushed him. Her third came slower because it hurt more. Todd knew exactly what he had done. "When?" she asked. "The closing was Monday. It was Thursday." "Who bought it?" "A couple from Massachusetts. They paid cash." "How much?" "Mom, this isn't the place to get into every detail." "It's exactly the place. You've left me no other one." He looked down. That was when she saw Eugene's cane leaning against the wall beside a plastic donation bag. It was made from cherry wood, darkened by years of use. Eugene had shaped the curved handle in his workshop and fitted a brass collar beneath it. He'd carried it during the last 2 years of his life, when his knees began troubling him. Since his death, Wanda had kept it in the umbrella stand near the front door. "What's that doing there?" she asked. Todd followed her eyes. "The center issued you a proper cane. That wooden thing isn't adjustable. That wooden thing was your father's. I know whose it was. Then take it out of that bag." "It's not in the bag. It's beside the bag because you're about to put it in." Todd rubbed his forehead. He'd been at the center for less than 20 minutes, and already he acted as though Wanda had worn him down over several days. "We can't move every piece of Dad's junk into assisted living." Wanda stood. The pain caught deep in her hip, but she waited until it passed. Then she crossed the room in careful steps and took the cherrywood cane. Todd reached for her elbow. She moved away from him. "I've got my balance." The therapist said to use the aluminum one. The therapist didn't say I couldn't carry this. She rested Eugene's cane across the bed. Its wood was scratched near the bottom, and the rubber tip had hardened with age. It was no longer safe for walking. She knew that. She also knew the difference between something useless and something no longer suited to its first purpose. Todd lowered his voice. "Golden Pines is expecting you at 2. Then somebody should call and tell them, 'I'm not coming.' Where are you going to go?" That was the question he believed would finish the argument. Wanda had no answer. 8 weeks earlier, she'd had a house. She'd had a checking account that covered her bills, a refrigerator full of ordinary food, and a blue ceramic dish by the door where she dropped her keys. Now her belongings filled 2 cardboard boxes, 1 suitcase, and a grocery bag containing her winter boots. Todd watched her face and mistook silence for surrender. "We already paid the deposit," he said. "Just try it for a month." With whose money? He hesitated. That hesitation opened the central question in Wanda's mind. It wasn't only where she would sleep that night. It was how much of her life Todd had taken control of, while everyone told her to concentrate on healing. To understand how she'd reached that room, it helped to go back to the morning she fell. January had frozen Wolfboro hard that year. Snowbanks stood along the streets with gray crusts from road salt. The sky was pale, and the cold made every sound carry. Wanda had been awake since 6. Retirement hadn't taught her how to sleep late. She made coffee, fed seed into the backyard bird feeder, and called a former client's daughter to ask how her father was doing. Then she put on her boots to bring in the newspaper. The patch of ice lay just beyond the front step. She didn't see it beneath the dusting of snow. Her right foot went forward, her body twisted the other way. She landed on her left side with a crack she felt more than heard. For several seconds, Wanda lay still. The newspaper waited 3 feet away in its plastic sleeve. Her breath came in short white clouds. She tried to sit up. The pain stopped her. She knew enough not to try again. During 30 years of home health work, she'd seen people make fractures worse because they were embarrassed to call for help. Wanda pulled her phone from her coat pocket and called emergency services. Then she called Todd. He arrived before the ambulance left. Jenna came with him, still wearing the black wool coat she used for real estate showings. Her blonde hair was smooth, her makeup perfect. She stood on the walkway while the paramedics lifted Wanda and kept looking at the house. At the hospital, X-rays confirmed a fractured hip. Surgery was scheduled for that afternoon. Todd sat beside Wanda's bed with a clipboard. "This is just so I can handle things while you're under," he said. Wanda had received pain medicine. The ceiling lights looked too bright, and every movement of the mattress sent pain through her side. What things? Talking to the doctors, insurance, whatever comes up. Amy Ortiz, Wanda's daughter, stood at the foot of the bed in Navy nursing scrubs. At 37, Amy worked long shifts at a clinic in Concord and carried guilt the way some people carried spare change. She always had a little available. "It's standard, Mom," Amy said. "Temporary medical power of attorney, just for the surgery." Wanda looked at her daughter. "You read it?" Amy glanced at Todd. "I looked through it. That wasn't an answer, but the orderly had arrived to take Wanda downstairs. Todd pointed to the signature line. "Right there." Wanda signed. She remembered Todd taking the clipboard. She remembered Amy kissing her forehead. She remembered asking one of them to bring Eugene's cane when she left the hospital, though she wouldn't be able to use it yet. After that, there were masks, white lights, and a cold room. The surgery went well. The first days afterward did not. Wanda hated needing help to lift her own leg. She hated the walker, the raised toilet seat, and the cheerful posters explaining how to avoid another fall. Still, she did what she had asked hundreds of clients to do. She breathed before standing. She took the pain medicine on schedule instead of waiting until she couldn't bear it. She practiced each movement until her body understood it. At the rehabilitation center, she learned the staff members' names within 2 days. She knew which aide had sore wrists, which nurse forgot to eat lunch, and which therapist was trying to hide a cold. Her therapist, Marcy, finally said, "You know you're supposed to let us take care of you. I am letting you. You asked me if I'd been sleeping. You look tired," Marcy laughed. "You're a difficult patient. I'm an experienced one." Todd visited twice during the first week. Amy came once after work and brought clean pajamas. Jenna sent a potted plant with a card signed by both of them. Whenever Wanda asked about home, Todd said everything was handled. The furnace had been checked. The mail was being collected. The driveway was plowed. Each answer was short and reasonable. Wanda accepted them because walking from her bed to the bathroom took all the concentration she had. What she didn't know was that Jenna had photographed the house 3 days after the surgery. Jenna's real estate business had looked successful from the outside. Her face appeared on bus stop advertisements around town, smiling above the words, "Local knowledge, personal care." Inside her office, the numbers told another story. 2 deals had fallen apart. She owed money on marketing contracts, office rent, and a line of credit she'd used to keep commissions coming. Todd knew about some of the debt, not all of it. He knew enough to feel trapped. The Andrews house was paid off. Wanda and Eugene had cleared the mortgage years earlier. Jenna saw it as something solid sitting inside a family emergency. She told Todd they could protect the value before medical bills consumed it. She told him an empty winter house could become a liability. She told him assisted living was safer for Wanda anyway. Each statement held enough truth to make the next one easier. A cash buyer made an offer before the listing reached the public market. The price was below what Wanda might have received in spring, but the closing could happen quickly. Todd signed where Jenna's closing attorney told him to sign. He used the temporary document Wanda had executed at the hospital, though the document spoke about treatment, insurance, and decisions during incapacity. It said nothing about selling real estate. The attorney should have stopped the transaction. Todd should have stopped it. Jenna knew a title company might question it. They moved faster instead. Amy knew the house might be sold. Todd told her Wanda couldn't safely return there, and that the sale proceeds would pay for a good assisted living apartment. Amy had just finished an 11-hour shift when he called. She said, "If Mom agreed, fine." Todd didn't correct her. By the time Amy learned Wanda had never agreed, the closing was already scheduled. Wanda knew none of this while she practiced stairs at rehab. She knew only that Todd became irritated when she asked for bank statements. She knew her cell phone bill had been changed to automatic payment from an account she didn't recognize. She knew Amy stopped meeting her eyes whenever Golden Pines came up. Then came discharge morning, the cardboard boxes, and Todd's statement about the keys. Wanda sat again, with Eugene's cane across her lap. "Show me the sale papers," she said. "They're in the car. Bring them in." "We don't have time." "I do." Todd looked at his watch. "The transport from Golden Pines is already on its way." "Cancel it. You can't just discharge yourself to nowhere. I'm not asking permission." His face changed then. The patient's son disappeared. In his place was a man who had taken on debt, made promises to his wife, and decided his mother's resistance was another problem to manage. "The house is gone," he said. "You need to accept that." Wanda ran her thumb over a shallow dent in Eugene's cane. "What happened to the money? It's being held for your care." "Where?" "In an account." "Whose name?" "Mom." "Whose name is on the account?" Todd looked toward the doorway again. Before he could answer, Amy appeared. She wore jeans and a green winter coat. Her dark hair was tied back, and there were half moons of fatigue beneath her eyes. She took in the boxes, Todd's expression, and Eugene's cane on Wanda's lap. "Did you tell her?" Amy asked. Todd gave her a warning look. Wanda answered. "He told me I don't need keys." Amy closed her eyes for a second. "You knew," Wanda said. "I knew they were considering a sale. There's no they. It was my house." "I thought you signed off on it," Todd cut in. "This isn't helping." Amy turned on him. "Did she sign a sale authorization? We had authority for medical decisions. She was incapacitated. She was in rehab, Todd. She called me every night." Wanda listened to them argue about her, as though she weren't sitting 3 feet away. She'd watched families do this around hospital beds. They would say, "Mother can't manage. Father gets confused. Aunt Ruth doesn't understand." Sometimes they were right. Sometimes they were frightened. Sometimes they wanted the older person quiet because quiet people were easier to move. Wanda raised Eugene's cane and struck its rubber tip once against the floor. The sound wasn't loud, but both of them stopped. "I want the papers," she said. "I want my bank statements. And I'm not going to Golden Pines." Todd's voice hardened. "Then tell us where you're going." Amy pulled a folded envelope from her purse. "There is one place." Todd stared at her. "Don't." Amy set the envelope on the bed. It contained a tax notice from Carroll County. At the top was an address Wanda hadn't visited in years, Pine Hollow Road. The property had belonged to Eugene. Calling it a camp was generous. There was an old single-room building near the road and a weather-beaten boathouse closer to Lake Winnipesaukee. The roof sagged, the plumbing hadn't worked in years, and part of the drive disappeared every spring beneath mud. After Eugene died in 2019, the tax notices came to the Wolfboro house. He had always paid them himself. Wanda continued paying for a while, though she couldn't explain why. Then one notice went missing during her recovery from pneumonia. Another arrived while she was in rehab. Todd had found the overdue balance while sorting her mail, $6,400. The county had started the tax deed process. Wanda had 60 days to redeem the property. Todd tapped the notice with one finger. That place is uninhabitable. You just asked where I was going. I wasn't suggesting a condemned shack on a swamp lot. It's on a lake, Amy said. It's barely on a lake. Dad held on to it because he held on to everything. Wanda looked at the address. She remembered summer afternoons there in the early years of her marriage, before Todd and Amy were grown, before Eugene became secretive about the place. She remembered the smell of sawdust in the boathouse, and Eugene telling her not to move his tools. She remembered that he'd kept paying taxes even when money was tight, but she knew nothing about the property beyond that. "Who owns it now?" she asked. Todd shrugged. "Technically you do until the county takes it." "Why technically?" "Dad left it to you. It was the only thing in the estate nobody wanted." Amy looked uncomfortable. "Todd said you could sign it over and let the county deal with it." Todd nodded. "That's the sensible option. Golden Pines has a furnished room. We can get you settled today." Wanda folded the notice along its existing crease. "How much did you pay Golden Pines?" "The deposit was $4,000. "From the house money?" "It's for your care. Cancel it." "We'll lose part of the deposit. Then you'll remember not to spend my money without asking." Todd's face reddened. "You can't live at Pine Hollow." Wanda stood again. This time she took the aluminum cane in her right hand and tucked Eugene's cherrywood cane beneath her left arm. "I can see it before deciding. You're not getting in my car with that plan." Amy picked up Wanda's suitcase. "She can get in mine." Todd turned on his sister. "You're going to drive a woman 8 weeks out of hip surgery to a property without heat. I'm going to drive Mom to look at something she owns. You agreed she needed care. I agreed because you said she agreed." Todd stared at her, searching for the guilt he usually used. Amy looked away, but she didn't put down the suitcase. Wanda gathered her coat. Outside, cold air met her at the rehabilitation center doors. She stopped beneath the awning while Amy brought the car around. Todd followed with the cardboard boxes. "This is a mistake," he said. "Possibly. You always tell people to plan for their limitations. I also tell them not to sign away their decisions because someone's in a hurry." He loaded the boxes into Amy's back seat with sharp movements. When he reached for Eugene's cane, Wanda held it closer. "I was only helping. You've helped enough today." The drive to Pine Hollow took a little over half an hour. Amy kept both hands on the wheel. For the first 10 minutes, neither woman spoke. Snow covered the fields beyond town. Bare trees stood close to the road. The lake appeared now and then through openings between houses, flat and gray beneath the winter sky. Finally, Amy said, "I'm sorry." Wanda looked out the passenger window. "I should have called you before the sale," Amy continued. "Todd said the paperwork was done. He said you understood. Did you believe him?" "I wanted to." That answer was honest enough to hurt. "Where are the proceeds?" Wanda asked. "I don't know. Find out." Amy nodded. "I will." They turned onto Pine Hollow Road. The plowed pavement narrowed, then gave way to packed snow. Branches brushed the sides of the car. At the end of the road, a leaning wooden post carried a faded metal number. Amy stopped. Beyond the post, a snow-covered drive curved down through pines. The camp sat crooked behind them, its roof patched with mismatched shingles. Farther down, near the frozen shoreline, stood the boathouse. One shutter hung loose. The chimney cap was missing. A fallen limb lay across the front steps. Amy stared through the windshield. "Mom, this is worse than Todd said." Wanda opened the car door and set the aluminum cane into the snow. She climbed out carefully, then stood with Eugene's cherrywood cane beneath her arm and the county notice in her pocket. The air smelled of pine, cold water, and old wood. Somewhere inside that neglected property was the reason Eugene had refused to let it go. Wanda didn't know what that reason was. She only knew her husband had kept this place when no one else wanted it. And now it was the last door left to her. Before the county closed it for good, she intended to find out why. Amy came around the car and tested the front steps with her boot. The fallen limb had split near the trunk. Its smaller branches covered the railing and blocked the door. Wanda studied the weight of it before she moved closer. "There's a handsaw in the trunk," Amy said. "You carry a handsaw?" "After last winter?" "Yes." Together they cut away the thinner branches. Amy did most of the sawing, while Wanda held the loose ends steady with her boot. It took 20 minutes to clear enough space for them to reach the porch. The front door had no visible damage, but none of Wanda's keys fit. "Todd probably has one," Amy said. "Then we'll ask." After I know what I'm asking for. Wanda walked around the camp. The snow beside the building hadn't been disturbed. A small back window had been boarded from inside, and the screen door hung open by one hinge. Near the far corner, a metal utility box was half buried beneath snow. Wanda brushed it clean with her glove. The electric meter was still attached, but the glass was cloudy. Amy leaned over her shoulder. Do you think the power's on? There's one way to learn. Wanda tried the back door. It moved inward half an inch, then caught against something. She pressed again. A box scraped across the floor inside. The opening was too narrow for Amy, but Wanda could fit her arm through. She reached around the door until her fingers found the box. It was light. She pushed it aside with the tip of Eugene's cane. The door opened onto a narrow kitchen. Cold, stale air came out first. Then came the smell of mouse droppings, damp wood, and an old propane stove. Amy covered her nose with her sleeve. Oh, Mom. The kitchen floor was covered with pine needles that had blown under the door. A wooden table stood beneath the window. 2 chairs were upside down on top of it. An empty cardboard box marked locksmith supplies had been left behind the back door. Wanda turned on the nearest wall switch. Nothing happened. She opened the metal cabinet under the sink. The pipes had been drained at least. Eugene had known enough to do that. A cast-iron wood stove stood in the main room. Its door was open, and several dry logs were stacked in a metal rack beside it. The walls were unfinished pine. One window had cracked across the bottom corner, but the roof above them looked dry. Amy walked from room to room, if they could be called rooms. A curtain separated the sleeping area from the main space. The bathroom held a toilet, a small sink, and a shower stall with a ring of rust around the drain. There was no furniture except the table, 2 chairs, and an iron bed frame without a mattress. You can't sleep here, Amy said. Not tonight, not any night. Wanda checked the stovepipe where it entered the wall. That depends on whether the chimney draws. Mom, there's no water. There's a hand pump outside. In January, it used to have a heating cable. You remember that? I remember Eugene complaining about the electric bill. Amy looked around again. She wasn't trying to insult the place. She was trying to measure it against what she believed a recovering woman needed. At the moment, the place lost badly. Wanda understood that. Understanding didn't mean agreeing. She pulled one of the chairs down and tested it before sitting. Her hip had begun to ache. Get the boxes out of the car, she said. Amy stared at her. Why? Because Todd expects me to arrive at Golden Pines with those boxes. I want him to understand I'm not going. That's a message. It's not a sleeping arrangement. We'll make the sleeping arrangement next. Amy started to argue, then stopped. She carried the boxes into the kitchen and set them on the table. Wanda took out her phone. Todd answered on the 4th ring. Did you see it? I'm standing inside. And I'm not signing it over. There was a pause. You can't make that decision after looking at it for 5 minutes. You made decisions about my house without looking at me at all. That's not fair. I need the Pine Hollow key. I don't have it. Who does? I don't know. Dad's keys were in his workshop stuff. Where is his workshop stuff? Some went to storage. Some got donated. Wanda's grip tightened around the phone. When? After the sale. We couldn't keep everything. Did you ask Ryan Woods? Why would I ask Ryan? Because he worked beside your father for 34 years. It was old equipment, Mom. Where's the storage unit? Todd went quiet again. Wanda took a pen from Amy's purse and wrote the address on the back of the tax notice when he finally gave it to her. I also want every paper from the sale, she said. The contract, the closing statement, the deed, and the document you used to sign for me. You don't need to deal with that today. I'm dealing with it today. Jenna has the file. Then Jenna can make a copy. Todd lowered his voice. You need to stop treating us like we stole from you. Bring the papers and I'll decide what to call it. She ended the call. Amy stood near the window, holding her own phone. I canceled the Golden Pines transport, she said. What did they say about the deposit? They said Todd signed the residency agreement. The deposit came from an Andrews family account. That's not an account name. I asked for the last 4 digits. Amy read them aloud. Wanda recognized the account immediately. It was the checking account she and Eugene had used for household expenses. After Eugene died, Wanda kept it because so many payments already came out automatically. I didn't give Todd permission to use that account, she said. Amy sat in the other chair. The medical form wouldn't give him permission. No. Then how did he access it? That's something else we're going to ask. Wanda folded a fresh sheet of paper from the bottom of the box. At the top, she wrote house. Beneath it, she listed the sale documents, bank statements, storage unit, and Golden Pines deposit. On a second sheet, she wrote Pine Hollow. She copied the county deadline and the amount due. Then she added power, water, chimney, lock, roof, and safe place to sleep. Amy watched her. What are you doing? Separating the problems. They're all connected. That's how people get overwhelmed. They call everything one problem and then say it can't be solved. Wanda had used the same method in other people's homes. A man with a failing heart might have unpaid bills, spoiled food, 4 medications, and a daughter who hadn't visited in a month. None of those things improved because everyone stood in the kitchen feeling frightened. First, you found out whether he'd taken his morning pills. Then you called about the electric bill. Then you threw away the bad milk. Wanda tapped the Pine Hollow list. Can you find the power company's number? The electricity had been disconnected for non-payment 9 months earlier. Restoring it required the overdue balance, an inspection, and someone present to meet the technician. The hand pump was frozen. The chimney hadn't been cleaned in at least 2 winters. The nearest motel with a ground floor room had space for 3 nights. Amy booked it before Wanda could object. It has a shower, Amy said, and heat. Those are my conditions if I'm helping. Fair enough. They spent the rest of the afternoon learning what could be learned without tools. Amy photographed the roof, windows, meter, pump, and broken screen door. Wanda opened drawers and cabinets, checking for damage. Most were empty. In one drawer, she found a box of wooden matches wrapped in wax paper. In another, there were 6 tea bags, hard with age. Near the sleeping area stood a small pine cabinet. Its top held a film of dust, except for a clean rectangle where something had recently been removed. Wanda ran one finger across it. Someone's been in here. Amy came over. How can you tell? That mark. It could be old. The rest of the dust isn't. They checked the snow outside again. No recent tracks led to the front or back doors besides their own, but wind could have covered them. Todd had said he didn't have the key. That didn't mean nobody did. Wanda added change lock to the list. By 4, the light had begun to fade. Amy carried the boxes back to the car. Wanda left nothing behind except the 2 upside-down chairs and the stale tea. At the motel, she called Ryan Woods. He answered with a cautious, "Hello," as though he expected someone selling insurance. "Ryan, it's Wanda," his voice softened. "Wanda Andrews. I heard you took a fall. News still travels. Faster than good sense. How's the hip?" "Improving. I need a locksmith." "That sounds more like you." "I'm at Pine Hollow." Silence held for a moment. "You're where?" "The camp. I need the doors rekeyed, and I need to know if the wood stove can be used." "The stove isn't a lock. You were around Eugene long enough to learn other things. Not necessarily useful things." "Can you come tomorrow?" Ryan asked why Todd wasn't handling it. Wanda gave him the short version. She didn't mention the missing sale papers or bank access. She wasn't ready to tell the whole town, and Ryan had never needed many facts before forming an opinion. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, "I'll be there at 9. Tell me what you charge. I'll tell you after I see whether the building is trying to kill us." Ryan arrived the next morning in a green pickup with a ladder tied to the roof. At 64, he still had the broad shoulders of someone who had carried toolboxes upstairs for most of his life. His beard had gone white around the chin, and he wore Eugene's old shop apron over a winter coat. Wanda noticed the apron before she said hello. Ryan saw her looking. "He gave me 3. I wore out 2. He opened the tailgate. Inside were lock cases, chimney brushes, a moisture meter, a drill, 2 lanterns, and a red thermos. "You brought half a shop. The other half was too cold." Amy had returned to Concord for work, but she'd made Wanda promise not to enter the camp alone. Ryan offered his arm on the icy slope. Wanda declined and used the aluminum cane. He didn't offer again. The front lock took him less than a minute to open. He frowned at the cylinder. "This isn't Eugene's." "How do you know?" "Cheap pins, wrong faceplate. He wouldn't put this on a chicken coop." Could Todd have changed it? Anybody could have. Ryan removed the lock and checked the wood around it. Fresh scrape marks showed beneath the plate. "This was installed recently," he said. How recently? Months, maybe, not years. Wanda thought of the clean rectangle on the cabinet. "Can you put in something better?" Ryan returned to his truck and brought back a solid brass deadbolt. "This one came out of the old shop stock," he said. "It'll hold until we decide what the door deserves." He cut 3 keys at a portable machine clamped to his tailgate. The machine's sharp grinding sound carried through the trees. When he handed the first key to Wanda, it was still warm. She closed her fingers around it. It was the first key anyone had given her since Todd said she wouldn't need them. Ryan checked the chimney next. A bird's nest blocked the top, but the liner was intact. He cleared it, cleaned the flue, and showed Wanda how to test the draft with a burning twist of newspaper. Smoke rose cleanly. "That's one problem," he said. "The pump? That's 3 problems pretending to be one." They worked until early afternoon. Ryan found the heating cable, but a section had split. The pump itself moved once he warmed the housing with a safe electric heater connected to his truck's power supply. Brown water coughed from the spout, then ran clear. Wanda filled a glass jar and held it to the light. "Don't drink it yet," Ryan said. "We'll test it." "I know, right. 30 years telling other people not to drink mystery water." She smiled for the first time since leaving rehab. While Ryan measured the broken window, Wanda swept the main room. The work was slow. She rested every 15 minutes, whether she wanted to or not. Her hip warned her when she leaned too far. At noon, Ryan poured coffee from his thermos and handed her the cup. "Eugene used to come out here alone," he said. "I know. Do you know how often?" "No. Most Saturdays in summer. Some Sundays, too. He said he was checking the property. He was always working on something." "What?" Ryan looked toward the lake. He didn't say. "You never asked?" "I asked plenty." Eugene answered what suited him. There was no accusation in Ryan's voice, but there was an old irritation. He'd spent decades beside a man who could make locks open and conversations close. "He kept tools in the boathouse," Ryan added. "Good tools. Some belonged to the shop. Todd said Dad's workshop things were donated or stored. Not those?" "You're sure?" "I sharpened the hand planes myself. Eugene promised we'd divide them when he quit working. Then he got sick, and after the funeral, nobody could find them." There it was, Ryan's reason for coming beyond loyalty to Wanda. He wanted to know what Eugene had done with the tools. The boathouse stood down a steep path. Snow covered the steps, and a chain hung across the outer door. Wanda looked at the slope. "Not today," Ryan said. "I didn't say today. You were thinking it loudly." Back at the motel that evening, Amy emailed the documents Jenna had finally sent. Wanda read them on Amy's old tablet. The house had sold for less than she expected. Fees, taxes, Jenna's commission, the assisted living deposit, and something described as family management expenses had already been deducted. Todd had signed the deed as Wanda's attorney in fact. The attached authority document was the same one Wanda remembered signing at the hospital. Its heading read, "Temporary Medical Power of Attorney." She read every page twice. There was nothing about a house, nothing about selling property, nothing about Todd opening accounts or paying himself expenses. Wanda saved the files in 3 separate places. Then she sent copies to Amy and to a new email address Todd didn't know. After that, she took Eugene's cane from beside the motel dresser. The wood needed attention. Todd had tossed it beneath other belongings, leaving a gray scrape along the handle. Wanda dampened a washcloth and cleaned it slowly. Near the brass collar, the cloth caught on a thin dark line. She turned the cane beneath the lamp. The line ran evenly around the shaft. It was too straight to be a crack. Wanda gripped the handle with one hand and the lower shaft with the other. At first, nothing moved. She wrapped the brass collar in the washcloth and tried again. The collar turned. Only a fraction, but it turned. Wanda stopped, adjusted her grip, and twisted until the hidden threads loosened. The handle lifted free from the cherry wood shaft. The cane was hollow. Inside, something small slid against the wood. Wanda tipped the shaft over the bed. A narrow roll of paper came out first, followed by a brass key no longer than her thumb. She unfolded the paper. Eugene's handwriting had grown shaky near the end of his life, but this was the firm, square writing she remembered from his shop labels. The note contained one sentence. The truth was never in the house. It was always here. Wanda read it again, then placed the note and key on the white motel bedspread. The key had an unusual cut. Instead of ordinary peaks and valleys along one edge, it had narrow grooves on both sides. A small letter A was stamped into the bow. She knew better than to guess which lock it fit. Eugene had made keys for half the homes in Wolfboro. He'd also made puzzle boxes, hidden drawers, and a kitchen cabinet that stayed locked until someone pressed a wooden button beneath the shelf. Todd used to show that cabinet to visitors as if his father were a magician. Wanda took pictures of the key and note. Then she wrapped both in a clean handkerchief and put them inside the zippered pocket of her purse. She didn't call Todd. She called Ryan at 7 the next morning. "I found something in Eugene's cane." "What kind of something?" "A key." Ryan was quiet. "And a note," Wanda added. "What does it say?" "I'll show you when you get here. You're learning from him, apparently." Ryan arrived at the camp before 8:30. He carried a plywood ramp he'd built overnight for the front step. "It's temporary," he said. "Don't admire it. I wasn't going to." He fixed it in place, then followed Wanda inside. The power company had restored electricity that morning after Ryan met the inspector. The camp's 2 wall lights worked, though one buzzed. Wanda set the brass key on the table. Ryan picked it up by the edges. He turned it beneath the light and ran his thumbnail over the grooves. "He cut this himself." "I assume so." "No, I mean, he made the blank. This wasn't ordered from a supplier." "How can you tell?" Ryan pointed to the stamped letter. His early custom pieces had numbers. Later, he used letters. A was usually for Andrews, but he didn't make many like this. What did they open? Whatever he built them for? Wanda handed him the note. He read it without speaking. His eyes moved once toward the window facing the lake. "Do you know what he meant by here?" she asked. "Pine Hollow." "That much I worked out." He could mean the camp, the land, the boathouse, or something inside them. Ryan folded the note along its original crease. He liked making people look twice. "Did he make the cane?" "The handle?" "Yes." "I watched him shape it. He never told me the shaft was hollow." That bothered Ryan more than he wanted to show. He'd believed he knew Eugene's work better than anyone. The cane had passed through his hands at the shop, yet he'd missed the seam beneath the brass collar. Wanda understood the feeling. She'd slept beside Eugene for 36 years and hadn't known either. They started with the camp. Ryan tested the key in the pine cabinet near the sleeping area. It didn't fit. They checked the small desk drawer built into the wall, the utility cupboard, and an old padlock on an exterior storage box. Nothing. The boathouse remained. The path down to the shoreline was steep, but the sun had softened the top layer of snow. Ryan spread sand from a bucket and went ahead with a shovel. Wanda followed slowly, placing the aluminum cane only where she could see solid ground. The boathouse stood partly over the frozen edge of the lake. Weathered gray boards covered its sides. One corner leaned toward the water, and several roof shingles lay scattered below. The chain across the door wasn't locked. It had been looped through the handles and hooked back onto itself. Ryan removed it. The door opened 6 inches before scraping against the floor. He put his shoulder into it, and old leaves pushed aside inside. Daylight entered through gaps in the boards. A narrow wooden boat sat upside down on sawhorses. Along the wall stood shelves filled with jars, rope, rusted hinges, and pieces of wood wrapped in newspaper. The workbench occupied the rear corner. Above it was a built-in cabinet made from dark pine. Its double doors had no handles. In the center sat a small brass keyway. Ryan looked at Wanda. "That's his." "How do you know?" "The keyway is tilted." It was. The opening leaned slightly to the left instead of standing straight. "He used to do that on private cabinets," Ryan said. "Made them harder to pick because your hand expects the pins to sit level." Wanda took the key from her purse. Ryan stepped aside. "You found it? You know locks. I know enough to let the owner turn her own key." She inserted it gently. It went in halfway and stopped. "Don't force it," Ryan said. "I'm not." She drew it back a fraction, tilted the bow, and felt the key settle deeper. Eugene had taught her that much. A lock could tell you when you were fighting it. She turned to the left. Something clicked behind the cabinet doors. Both doors opened an inch. Inside were 3 hand planes, a roll of carving tools, 2 wooden boxes, and Eugene's old shop ledger. A framed photograph leaned against the back panel. Ryan reached for the tools, then stopped himself. Wanda lifted the photograph. It showed her and Eugene sitting on the boathouse steps. Wanda wore white shorts and a red shirt tied at the waist. Eugene had one arm around her and a paper cup in his other hand. The lake behind them was bright with afternoon sun. On the back, Eugene had written Pine Hollow, 1994. Wanda remembered the day, though she hadn't remembered it was that year. Eugene had brought her out to see repairs he said he was doing for the owner. They ate sandwiches on the steps. He'd been unusually pleased with himself. He owned it by then, Ryan said. Wanda turned. What? Ryan was holding the shop ledger open. Look. The page was dated October of 1994. Eugene had written Pine Hollow across the top. Beneath it was a list of locks, lumber, roofing felt, fasteners, and concrete blocks. In the margin, he'd added, "First winter back." "Back where?" Wanda asked. Ryan shook his head. "I don't know. You said he came here to work." "He did." "Did you know he owned the land?" "I knew it was Andrew's property years ago. His parents lost it when he was young. After that, I thought he had some arrangement with whoever bought it." Wanda studied the photograph again. Eugene hadn't said the camp belonged to him. He'd acted as if he were repairing another person's place. Why hide that from me? You'd have to ask him. I'm aware of the difficulty. Ryan looked back into the cabinet. One of the wooden boxes held whetstones. The other contained brass lock parts wrapped in oiled paper. "These planes are the ones I told you about," he said. "Are they yours?" "Some were bought for the shop. Some were Eugene's before I started. So, we'll sort them properly." Ryan nodded, though his hand stayed on the largest plane. Behind the ledger lay an envelope with Wanda written across it. She opened it. Inside was another piece of paper in Eugene's firm handwriting. "You found what I promised Ryan. Let him take the long jointer and the carving roll. The rest stays with the bench until you understand the floor. Start where the boards don't agree." Ryan read over her shoulder. "He remembered," he said. The relief in his voice surprised Wanda. This wasn't only about valuable tools. Eugene had made a promise, then died before keeping it. Ryan had spent 7 years wondering whether the promise had meant anything. Wanda handed him the carving roll. "He says that's yours." Ryan didn't take it immediately. "We should finish first. He told me to let you take it." Ryan accepted the roll with both hands and set it carefully on the upturned boat. The long joiner plane came next. Its wooden body was almost 2 feet long, smooth from use. Ryan checked the blade, wrapped the plane in an old shop cloth, and put it beside the carving tools. Then both of them looked at the floor. Most of the boards ran from the door toward the lake. Beneath the workbench, 3 shorter boards ran across them. "They don't agree," Wanda said. Ryan crouched. He pressed along the seams and checked for nail heads. "There aren't any nails." "Can you lift them?" "Not from the top." He slid a thin pry bar into one seam. It entered less than a 1/4 inch and struck metal. Ryan moved it to the other end. The same thing happened. "Steel frame underneath," he said. "Or a box." Wanda lowered herself onto the workbench stool. The trip down the slope had tired her more than she wanted to admit. Ryan noticed, but didn't comment. He lay on the floor and shone a flashlight under the bench. "There's a brass plate against the wall. Another lock?" "Maybe." It was difficult to reach. The workbench had been built into the wall and floor. Moving it would require removing shelves and cutting bolts. Ryan reached beneath with his phone and took several photographs. The brass plate held 2 narrow openings. One resembled the keyway from the cabinet. The other was round and no wider than a pencil. "A 2-part mechanism," Ryan said. "Can the key open it?" "Possibly. But something goes in that round hole first." "What?" If Eugene wanted me to know, he didn't mention it. They searched the cabinet again. They checked the tools, boxes, ledger, and the back of the photograph. No rod pin or second key appeared. Wanda looked at Eugene's note. "Start where the boards don't agree." They had started there. The floor had answered with another question. A car door slammed outside. Ryan stood. Todd's voice came from the path. "Mom?" Wanda put the note into her purse. Ryan closed the cabinet but didn't lock it. Todd appeared at the boathouse door carrying a document envelope. Jenna followed him. She wore polished boots that weren't meant for the slope and looked irritated by the mud along the edges. "What are you doing down here?" Todd asked. "Looking through your father's tools." His eyes moved to Ryan, then to the open tool roll on the boat. "You're giving things away now?" "They're Ryan's." "According to who?" "Your father." Todd gave a short laugh. "Dad's been dead 7 years. That hasn't stopped you from deciding what he wanted." Jenna stepped between the men before Todd could answer. "We brought the paperwork you requested. I received the copies. These are different." She handed Wanda the envelope. Inside was a document titled Confirmation and Ratification of Sale. The first page said, Wanda approved Todd's actions, accepted the sale price, and agreed that every decision had been made for her benefit. A yellow tab marked the signature line. Wanda read all 3 pages. You want me to make the sale legal after it happened? Jenna's smile held. The sale is legal. This clears up a technical concern raised by the title company. What concern? The wording in the power of attorney could have been broader. It could have mentioned property. It gave Todd authority while you were incapacitated. I wasn't incapacitated. You just had surgery. I spoke to both of you every day. Todd shifted near the doorway. Signing this protects everyone. Everyone who? The buyers, Jenna, me, you. How does it protect me? It prevents an expensive dispute. Wanda returned the papers to the envelope. I'm not signing. Jenna's smile disappeared. Then the title insurer may freeze the remaining proceeds until this is resolved. Where are those proceeds now? In escrow. Yesterday they were in an account for my care. Todd looked at Jenna. Jenna answered, the majority is being held. Some necessary expenses were paid. Give me a full accounting. We can do that. But you need to understand something. Pine Hollow's tax deadline is approaching. If the sale funds are tied up, you won't have access to them. The warning was plain. Sign away the right to challenge the house sale, and money might be available to save the camp. Refuse, and the county deadline would keep moving. How many days are left? Wanda asked. 43, Jenna said. She knew the exact number. Wanda folded the envelope and put it in her purse beside Eugene's notes. I'll find another way. Todd looked around the boathouse. He saw rotting shelves, cold boards, old tools, and a 70-year-old boat that would probably never touch water again. He didn't see a hidden mechanism beneath the workbench. He didn't see the custom key in Wanda's pocket. He saw only his mother making a foolish stand over worthless property. Don't expect us to fund this, he said. I don't. Or fix it. I didn't ask. When this falls apart, Golden Pines may not hold the room. Then tell them to stop holding it. Todd turned and started up the path. Jenna remained for one moment. If you lose both properties, she said quietly, that'll be your choice. Wanda looked at her. The house wasn't my choice. Jenna had no answer that could make the statement untrue. She followed Todd outside. Ryan waited until the car left. 43 days, he said. Wanda looked down at the mismatched boards. Then, we'd better stop wasting them. Ryan put the cabinet key back into Wanda's hand. We need the cane. It's at the motel. Bring the whole thing. Don't take it apart again. Wanda looked at the round opening in the brass plate. You think part of the cane fits there. I think Eugene made 2 locks and left 1 key. That means the second part was either attached to the first or too obvious to look like a key. The next morning, Amy drove Wanda back with Eugene's cane across the rear seat. She'd taken another day off, though she claimed she was owed the hours. Ryan was already in the boathouse. He'd cleared the shelves above the workbench and removed 4 heavy bolts from its legs. Amy looked at the floor. You're planning to lift that? Slide it, Ryan said. My mother isn't helping. I hadn't asked her. Wanda set the cane on the upturned boat. Both of you can stop assigning me things I haven't volunteered to do. They slid the workbench 6 inches from the wall. Ryan used wooden wedges to keep its weight off the floorboards. The movement exposed the full brass plate. 1 keyway leaned left. Beside it was the round opening. Wanda unscrewed the cane's handle. With the handle removed, the bottom of the brass collar was visible. A narrow pin projected from its center. Wanda hadn't noticed it in the motel room because the pin had been seated inside the hollow shaft. Ryan held the handle near the plate without inserting it. Same diameter. Amy crouched beside him. Dad made his cane part of a lock? Looks that way? Why? That's what we're trying to learn. The pin slid into the round opening. It went in almost to the collar. Ryan held it steady while Wanda inserted the small brass key. Which way? She asked. The cabinet opened left. Try right. The key resisted. Wanda stopped. Ryan adjusted the cane handle by a fraction. Something shifted behind the plate. Now. Wanda turned the key to the right. A metal bar moved beneath the floor with a low scraping sound. The 3 mismatched boards lifted slightly at one end. Amy sat back on her heels. No, she said softly. Ryan removed the handle and key. Then he worked his fingers beneath the raised boards and lifted them as a single panel. Underneath was a shallow cavity framed in steel. A rectangular metal box filled most of it. The box had been wrapped in thick plastic and set above the damp ground on narrow wooden supports. A rubber seal ran around its lid. Ryan touched one corner. Dry. Can we lift it? Amy asked. Not with Wanda standing over us. I'm not in the way. You're making me nervous. Wanda moved to the stool without argument. Her hands had begun to tremble, and she didn't want either of them to see. Ryan and Amy lifted the box onto the floor. It was heavier than its size suggested. Ryan cut the plastic with a utility knife, keeping the blade away from the metal. The lid had two simple latches. No lock? Amy said. The floor was the lock, Ryan answered. Wanda knelt slowly, using the workbench for support. Amy moved closer in case she lost balance, but didn't touch her. Wanda opened the first latch, then the second. The seal released with a soft pull. Inside were canvas bags, document folders, and a large envelope wrapped in oilcloth. The lining was clean and dry. Eugene had written dates on the canvas bags in black marker: 1996, 2001, 2008, 2015. Ryan lifted the first bag. Metal shifted inside. He placed it on the floor and loosened the drawstring. Silver coins spilled into his palm. They were old American dollars, half dollars, and smaller pieces Wanda didn't recognize. Some were dull gray. Others had been sealed in clear holders. Amy picked up one holder by its edges. Is it real? Ryan turned the coin toward the light. Looks real. Worth how much? I fix locks. You collect old tools. Tools have handles. Coins have people arguing over them. They opened the other bags carefully. One held silver coins in paper rolls. Another contained smaller gold coins sealed in square plastic cases. A third held modern bullion coins in protective sleeves. Beneath the bags were two wooden trays. Each tray held rows of gold pieces, some no larger than shirt buttons. Nobody tried to estimate the total again. Wanda looked at the dates. Eugene had added to the box for years. He'd done it while they were paying Todd's college expenses, helping Amy with nursing tuition, replacing the furnace, and buying groceries from the discount shelf because Eugene claimed canned tomatoes tasted the same at any price. For a moment, anger rose before she could name its direction. You didn't tell me, she said. Amy looked at her. Mom? Wanda touched the edge of the metal box. Not you. Ryan understood. He should have. The answer helped because it wasn't an excuse. Wanda lifted the first document folder. Inside was a deed dated in 1994. Eugene's name appeared as the buyer. The property description included the shoreline, the camp, the boathouse, and several acres beyond what Wanda had assumed belonged to Pine Hollow. She read the legal description twice without understanding all of it. What does this mean? Amy asked. It means he bought the property, Wanda said. From who? A bank. Ryan leaned closer. After the foreclosure? The seller is Granite County Savings. That bank hasn't existed for years. A cashier's check receipt was clipped behind the deed. The money had come from an account in Eugene's name alone. There were also property maps, tax receipts, and handwritten records of repairs. Eugene had documented new pilings beneath the boathouse, drainage work near the road, roof repairs, and stone placed along the shoreline. The second folder contained a document with a blue cover, Pine Hollow Irrevocable Trust. The date was in 2016. Peter Hansen's name appeared at the bottom as the drafting attorney. The signatures had been notarized. Wanda read the first page slowly. Eugene had transferred the Pine Hollow property into the trust. Wanda was named sole trustee and sole beneficiary. After Eugene's death, every interest remained with her. Amy read over Wanda's shoulder. Did you know about this? No. Your signature isn't on it. It didn't need to be if Eugene created and funded it. How do you know? I've sat through enough family meetings to recognize trust language. I don't know whether it's valid. Ryan pointed to the notary seal. Looks valid. It looks like paper. We need the lawyer. The trust said the Pine Hollow property wasn't part of Eugene's probate estate. It couldn't be distributed under his will. It also included language limiting any other person's authority to sell, mortgage, or transfer it. Todd's medical document had never covered real estate. Even a broader financial power might not have reached this property. Wanda didn't say that aloud yet. She wanted Peter Hansen to explain it before hope made her careless. Beneath the trust lay the oilcloth-wrapped envelope. To Wanda, when the time is right was written across the front. Amy looked toward the door. Do you want us to leave? No. Wanda opened it with one finger beneath the flap. The letter was 7 pages long. The first page began with an apology. "Wanda, I should have told you this while I was alive. I kept waiting for the right day, and then I became a man with fewer days than plans." She paused. The lake moved beneath the boathouse with low sounds under the ice. Ryan stood near the cabinet, his hands in his coat pockets. Amy sat on the floor beside the open box. Wanda continued. "Eugene wrote that Pine Hollow had belonged to his parents. They lost it to tax foreclosure in 1976, during the worst years of his father's illness. Eugene had been unable to save it. The loss stayed with him. In 1994, after receiving a small inheritance from an uncle, he learned the bank still held the neglected parcel. He bought it back with his own money and put the deed in his name. He hadn't told Wanda because he was ashamed of the condition of the property and the debt attached to it. He planned to repair it first. Then Todd needed tuition help. Amy needed help with school. The shop struggled through 2 slow winters. Each year, Eugene found another reason to wait. The longer he waited, the harder truth became. He collected coins because he didn't trust himself to leave money untouched in an ordinary account. Cash became a new truck, a loan to Todd, a repair at the family house. Coins locked beneath the boathouse floor remained what he intended them to be, for Wanda. He wrote that the trust was Peter Hansen's suggestion after Eugene's health began failing. Pine Hollow had been purchased with separate inherited money. By placing it in an irrevocable trust for Wanda, he meant to keep it outside his will and beyond any argument among his heirs. He wanted her to have something nobody could quietly divide. The last page was shorter. "Ryan knows what honest work looks like, even when he doesn't know the whole reason for it. Doris Kennedy knows where this land came from. Peter has the papers that match these. Ask all 3. Don't take my word simply because I'm gone. The coins are security. The land is the greater part. I didn't preserve the shore so somebody could cover it with large houses after I died. Use it, protect it, or make your home here if life ever sends you back. You always made a home where other people were frightened. I wanted one place to be ready to hold you. I'm sorry I made secrecy part of the gift. Eugene." Wanda lowered the letter. Amy wiped both cheeks with the heel of her hand. Ryan looked through the open boathouse doors toward the frozen lake. Wanda felt no simple relief. Eugene had protected her without trusting her with the truth. He'd saved money while allowing her to worry over bills. He'd built a place for her and left her unaware it existed in any meaningful way. Love was present in the box. So was stubbornness. So was fear. She folded the pages carefully. Amy spoke first. "Todd can't touch this. We don't know that yet. The trust says he can't. A paper says he can't. I want to know what the law says." Ryan lifted one of the canvas bags. "And what these are worth." "We need someone who deals in coins," Wanda said. "Not a buyer, an appraiser." Amy took out her phone. "I can find one. Not yet." "First we call Peter Hansen." Before Amy could search for his number, someone knocked against the boathouse doorframe. An older woman stood outside in a long brown coat, holding a walking stick cut from birch. Her white hair showed beneath a knitted cap. Wanda recognized Doris Kennedy, though they hadn't spoken in years. Doris looked at the open floor, the metal box, and Eugene's letter in Wanda's hands. "So," she said, "he finally told you." Wanda stood with help from the workbench. "You knew?" "I knew he bought the land back. I knew he was keeping something safe. Eugene never told me what." "Why didn't you tell me?" "He made me promise not to interfere while he was alive. After he died, I thought his attorney would contact you." No one did. Doris's mouth tightened. Then somebody failed. She stepped inside and closed the door against the wind. "Eugene came to my house in the fall of 1994, she said. "He had the deed in his coat and mud to his knees, asked me to witness him opening the camp. He said his family had lost enough things because nobody paid attention to a deadline." Wanda looked at the county notice folded in her purse. "Did he say what the land was worth?" "Not in money." "What did he say?" Doris looked toward the shoreline. "He said one day people would understand there wasn't much undeveloped water left." Amy opened the property map across the workbench. The boundary lines reached farther along the lake than any of them had realized. Doris studied it. "That's all yours," she said. "The wetland, the cedar point, and the clean strip beyond the cove." Wanda placed her hand flat on the map. Until that morning, Pine Hollow had been the unwanted place Todd offered because it carried debt. Now there were coins beneath its floor, a trust bearing her name, and a shoreline Eugene had spent 25 years quietly holding together. None of it was proven yet. But the problem had changed. Wanda no longer needed to decide whether the camp was worth saving. She needed to find out why Eugene had worked so hard to keep anyone else from taking it. Doris gave Wanda Peter Hansen's number from an address book she kept beside her kitchen telephone. He moved his office to Main Street, she said. Same man, better windows. Wanda called from the boathouse. Peter's assistant scheduled a meeting for Monday morning after Wanda explained that Eugene's original trust had been found. Until then, the documents went into a waterproof case Ryan brought from his truck. The coins stayed in the metal box. They lowered it into the cavity, replaced the floor panel, and locked the mechanism with the cane handle and brass key. Ryan changed the boathouse lock that afternoon. He handed Wanda 2 more keys. She put all 3 on a plain steel ring. 1 opened the camp, 1 opened the boathouse. The 3rd belonged to the motel room. None opened the Wolfboro house anymore. Amy left before dark, taking copies of the house sale documents and the bank account number with her. She called the next afternoon from the parking lot of Wanda's bank. I found out how Todd got access, she said. Wanda sat at the camp table while Ryan replaced a damaged section of wall near the stove. Tell me. He brought the medical power of attorney to the branch. He said you were incapacitated and needed him to manage payments during recovery. That document doesn't allow it. The branch manager agrees. Now. What did they let him do? They gave him account information. Then he used your online access. How? He reset the password with your phone. Wanda remembered Todd carrying her phone during the first days after surgery. He'd said he was keeping it charged. Amy continued. The bank froze online access. They want you to come in with identification. I'll go tomorrow. There's more. Ryan stopped working. Wanda motioned for him to continue, but the hammering didn't resume. Amy read from the bank record. Todd had paid Golden Pines $4,000. He'd paid a moving company $2,300. A storage company received 6 months in advance. Then there was a check for $8,000 written to Andrews Family Management. What is Andrews Family Management? Wanda asked. It was registered by Jenna in December, before the fall, before the surgery. That date settled something inside Wanda. Todd and Jenna might not have planned her injury, but Jenna had created a company capable of receiving family money weeks before there was any medical emergency to manage. What did they say the payment covered? Sorting, moving, cleaning, and supervising the house. Who signed the check? Todd signed your name, then wrote his initials beside it. Wanda looked at her own hands resting on the table. For 30 years, families had trusted those hands with pill bottles, house keys, wedding rings, and checkbooks. Wanda had once driven 40 minutes back to a client's house because she found 75 cents from his grocery change in her coat pocket. Todd had paid himself $8,000 for emptying his mother's home. Where did the money go after that, she asked. The management company transferred most of it to Jenna's real estate business. There it was. Not confusion, not a rushed decision made beside a hospital bed. A path had been built from Wanda's account to Jenna's business, and every step carried a sensible label. Management, moving, care. Amy's voice dropped. I'm going to their house. No. Mom? Not without me. You're supposed to avoid stairs. They have a ground floor kitchen. They won't tell you the truth. They may if they have to look at me. The following morning, Amy drove Wanda to the bank first. The manager apologized 3 times, closed the compromised online profile, and printed every transaction from the day of Wanda's fall. He also gave her a letter stating that the medical power of attorney did not authorize Todd to operate the account. The bank's own employee had failed to read the limits properly. Wanda asked him to remove Todd from every form of access. Then she asked for cashier's checks covering the motel, the power restoration, and necessary repairs at Pine Hollow. What remained in the checking account wasn't enough to pay the full tax balance. The house proceeds stayed frozen with the closing company because of the title problem. The manager slid a fraud affidavit toward her. If you sign this, we'll begin recovery on the unauthorized payments. Wanda read it. I'm taking a copy today. You don't want to file? I want to hear what my son says first. The manager didn't approve, but he made the copy. Todd's house stood on a quiet street south of town. Jenna's white sport utility vehicle was in the driveway, though she'd told Amy she had showings all day. Todd opened the door and blocked it with his body. This isn't a good time. Wanda leaned on the aluminum cane. It wasn't a good time when you packed my room. You managed. He looked past her at Amy. You brought her here? She asked me to drive. I'm standing in front of you, Wanda said. Todd moved aside. Jenna sat at the kitchen island with her laptop open. Papers covered the counter. She closed the computer when Wanda entered. Wanda placed the bank records on the island. What was the $8,000 for? Todd pulled out a chair. Sit down. I can stand for this. Mom, please. She remained where she was. Jenna reached for the statement. Those were legitimate management costs. List them. The movers, cleaning, my time, Todd's time. The movers were paid separately. There were other expenses. List them. Jenna glanced at Todd. Todd said, We spent days clearing that house. You spent days giving away my belongings. We stored what mattered. Who decided what mattered? Todd rubbed one hand across his mouth. Wanda turned to Jenna. Why did my money go into your business? Jenna sat straighter. The management company paid for professional services provided by my brokerage. What services? Pricing consultation, buyer contact, coordinating the closing. You received a commission at closing. That was for representing the sale. You didn't represent me. You never spoke to me. Jenna's face tightened. I represented the transaction. That isn't an answer. Amy stood near the kitchen door with her arms folded. She'd spent the drive rehearsing what she would say. Now she said nothing. Wanda didn't need help asking questions. Todd sat across from his wife. We were going to replace the money, he said. Jenna turned toward him. Todd? No. She already has the statements. Replace it from where? Wanda asked. When the house proceeds cleared. So the $8,000 was a loan. It was temporary. Did you write a loan agreement? Todd looked down. Jenna closed the laptop completely. My business had a cash flow problem, she said. A temporary one. 2 closings fell apart in December, and I had advertising commitments, office rent, staff payroll. You don't have staff, Amy said. I have contract support. How much debt? Wanda asked. Jenna didn't answer. Todd did. About $90,000. Amy stared at him. You said things were fine. They will be fine. The house sale was supposed to clear her business debt, Wanda said. Not all of it, Todd replied. We needed enough to stabilize things. From my house. You weren't going back there. You decided that before my surgery. Todd pushed away from the island. No, Mom. We decided after the doctor said recovery could take months. The company was registered in December. Jenna's eyes moved to the bank statement. Wanda waited. The room stayed quiet long enough for the refrigerator motor to start. Finally, Jenna said, I registered it for estate cleanouts. It was supposed to be another service line, and when I fell, you had a use for it. That isn't how this started. How did it start? Jenna got up and walked to the sink. She looked through the window rather than at Wanda. The buyers had been looking for a house near town. They'd lost 2 offers. I knew yours would suit them. You knew mine wasn't listed. I knew it might become available. Because you'd already decided I wouldn't return. Jenna faced her then. You lived alone. The front steps iced over. The upstairs bathroom needed work. Your bedroom was on the 2nd floor. Everyone would have told you to move eventually. Eventually belongs to the person living the life. We were trying to prevent a crisis. No, my fall was the crisis. You saw it as an opening. Todd struck the countertop with his palm. That's enough. Wanda looked at him. He'd been growing angrier with each answer, not because Jenna had lied, but because the reasons sounded worse when spoken plainly. I did what I thought was best, he said. You would have fought every change. You always do. What changes have I fought? You refused to stop working until your client's family stopped calling. You stayed in that house after Dad died. You wouldn't hire anyone for the yard. You wouldn't talk about assisted living. I was 68, not 98. You broke your hip getting the newspaper, and I learned to walk again. Todd turned away. He had been frightened when the hospital called. That part was real. He'd seen his mother on a stretcher and imagined years of emergencies, bills, and midnight telephone calls. Then Jenna showed him a path that solved several problems at once. Sell the house. Pay for supervised care. Keep part of the money available for Jenna's debt. Call the whole thing responsible. Once he accepted the first decision, every later decision became easier to defend. Wanda saw that now. Todd hadn't acted from one motive. He'd acted from fear, convenience, and money, then arranged them in the order that made him look kind. What was the plan for the remaining proceeds? She asked. Your care came first, he said. And after that, we would manage them. Through the company? Todd didn't answer. Jenna did. We discussed investing a portion in your business. It would have earned more than a savings account, if it survived. Jenna looked away. Amy stepped closer to the island. And Pine Hollow, she asked. Why give Mom that? Todd laughed without humor. Because nobody wanted it. It owed taxes, it wasn't insured, and the county was going to take it anyway. She kept saying she wouldn't go to Golden Pines. Fine, I showed her the alternative. You thought she'd see the camp and give up, Wanda said. I thought you'd be reasonable. And if I signed Pine Hollow over, the county would handle it. Then I'd have no house, no land, and no direct control of the sale money. You'd have care. Wanda picked up the statements. At last, every small piece sat in its proper place. Todd's hurry at the rehabilitation center. Jenna's buyer waiting before Wanda knew the house was for sale. The company formed in December. The cash withdrawal disguised as management. The assisted living deposit paid before Wanda agreed. The worthless camp offered as proof that she had no real choice. They hadn't expected Pine Hollow to save her. They'd expected it to frighten her back into their plan. Wanda took the fraud affidavit from her purse and placed it beside Jenna's laptop. This recovers the unauthorized money and begins a bank investigation. Todd read the heading. Are you threatening me? No, I'm showing you the next paper. You'd report your own son. I came here before signing it. Jenna sat down again. Her face had lost its professional calm. What do you want? She asked. A full accounting by tomorrow. Every dollar from the house. Every item moved, sold, donated, or stored. You'll return the $8,000 to my account. You'll cancel Golden Pines and request the unused deposit. You'll give me access to the storage unit. We don't have $8,000 sitting around, Todd said. Then make a proposal in writing. And if we do, I'll decide my next step after I read it. That's not a promise. No. Todd looked at Amy, expecting her to soften the demand. Amy met his eyes. You told me Mom agreed, she said. You used me to make it sound true. I was trying to keep the family together. You didn't ask the family. You assigned us parts. Todd's expression changed. Until then, he'd assumed Amy would return to his side once the argument became uncomfortable. She didn't. Wanda took the bank papers and turned toward the door. Todd followed her into the hall. What are you doing at Pine Hollow? He asked. Repairing it. With what money? Mine. Does Ryan think there's something valuable out there? Wanda stopped. Todd didn't know about the box. He was asking because Ryan's presence bothered him, and because value was the language he understood best. Your father thought the place mattered, she said. Dad thought every broken chair mattered. Then you have nothing to worry about. She stepped outside with Amy. Behind them, Todd remained in the doorway, watching until the car pulled away. He still believed Pine Hollow was a burden his mother had chosen out of anger. For the moment, Wanda intended to let him keep believing it. Monday morning, Wanda carried the waterproof case into Peter Hansen's office. Peter met her in the reception area and took the case himself. He had gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the careful manner of someone who disliked guessing in front of clients. Ryan and Amy came with her. Doris had offered, but Wanda asked her to remain available by telephone. Peter spread the deed, trust, and Eugene's letter across a conference table. I have copies of these, he said. Wanda looked at him. Then why didn't you contact me? I didn't know Eugene had died until 2 years afterward. I wasn't involved with his probate estate. When I learned, I wrote to the address Eugene gave me for trust notices. Pine Hollow. Peter nodded. The letter was returned. I sent another to your Wolfboro address. I received no response. I never saw it. Peter didn't offer a theory. He pulled a thick file from a cabinet. My office retained a signed counterpart of the trust. The document you found is the original property copy. He placed them side by side. The seals matched, the dates matched, so did the signatures. Peter explained it in ordinary language. Eugene bought Pine Hollow in 1994, using an inheritance kept in his own name. In 2016, he transferred the property into an irrevocable trust. Eugene served as trustee while he lived. Wanda became sole trustee upon his death and remained the sole beneficiary. The trust, not Eugene's will, controlled the property, Peter said. Nothing had to pass through probate. Upon his death, your authority became automatic. So I've owned it since 2019. You've controlled the trust that owns it. For practical purposes, yes. Could Todd sell it? No. Could he use the medical power of attorney? Peter read the hospital document. This authorized medical decisions during temporary incapacity. It gave him no authority over your bank account, your house, or this trust. What if it had been a general financial power? The trust requires specific written authority accepted by the trustee. You're the trustee. Todd had none. Amy leaned forward. Could another heir challenge it? Anyone can file something. That doesn't mean it has merit. What would they argue? They might claim Eugene lacked capacity, acted under pressure, or transferred property that wasn't his. My file answers all three. Peter removed a physician's letter, dated several weeks before the signing. Eugene had asked his doctor to confirm he understood his property and decisions. There was also an independent appraisal from 2016, the bank record tracing the purchase money, and Peter's own meeting notes. Eugene anticipated a disagreement, Wanda asked. He anticipated family. Peter said it without humor. He was particularly concerned that someone might argue Pine Hollow belonged in his estate because it had once been family land. He wanted the record clear. The parcel was purchased after foreclosure from a bank. It was his separate acquisition. Wanda looked at Eugene's letter. He did all this and never told me. He told me he intended to. He intended many things. Peter accepted that. He prepared a trustee certificate confirming Wanda's authority. He also called the county tax office while they sat there. The full redemption amount, including interest and recording costs, was $6,582. The deadline remained 40 days away. Peter asked for a written payoff statement. Then he examined the coin inventory Ryan had begun. You'll need a specialist. I need someone who isn't trying to buy them cheaply, Wanda said. I know an appraiser in Portsmouth, Bradley Ruiz. He charges by time, not by value. Bradley came 2 days later. They didn't carry the coins into town. Peter arranged for the box to be moved by an insured security company from the boathouse to a private room at Wanda's bank. Wanda watched every bag leave the cavity. She signed the transport list herself, then rode with Amy to meet the shipment. Bradley spent most of 2 days examining, weighing, and recording. He wore cotton gloves for some pieces and used bare hands for others. He explained that clean hands were safer than loose gloves when handling certain coins by their edges. Ryan stayed for the first morning. He lost interest when Bradley began discussing mint marks and went back to repair the camp window. Wanda remained. She wanted to know what Eugene had saved, not merely the total. Some silver dollars had modest value. Others were scarce dates Eugene had bought years before prices rose. The gold included American eagles, older European pieces, and small bullion coins purchased at regular intervals. Bradley found Eugene's receipts at the bottom of one canvas bag. They showed purchases from coin shops, estate sales, and auctions over more than 20 years. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had appeared from nowhere. On the second afternoon, Bradley closed his laptop. At current market value, with a reasonable allowance for dealer fees, I'd appraised the collection at $340,000. Amy made a small sound. Wanda looked at the rows of coins. Not what someone might claim at auction, she said. What they're worth now. That's my conservative fair market figure. How much could be sold quickly without sacrificing the better pieces? Bradley selected several common bullion coins and rolls of ordinary silver. This group would bring about $12,000 from a reputable dealer. There's no reason to rush the rarer material. Wanda authorized the sale through an insured dealer Bradley recommended. The proceeds went directly into a new trust account opened under her control. The first payment from that account went to the county. Peter delivered the cashier's check and obtained a stamped redemption receipt. Pine Hollow was no longer in danger of being taken for taxes. Wanda held the receipt by its edges. 40 days had become no deadline at all. The next payment covered insurance. The third paid for plumbing, roof work, and a proper mattress. She left the rest untouched. Bradley's appraisal established the value of the coins, but Eugene's letter had said the land was the greater part. Peter turned to that question next. Among his old files were letters Eugene had exchanged with the Winnipesaukee Shoreline Conservancy. Eugene had asked about protecting undeveloped shoreline while retaining the camp and boathouse. He never finished the process. With Wanda's permission, Peter sent copies of the property map and trustee certificate to Sean Jimenez, the Conservancy's director. Sean called Wanda directly the following morning. "I'd like to walk the property with you," he said. "Not just view the maps. Bring boots." He arrived with survey records, a camera, and a folding measuring pole. He wore a dark wool cap and stopped several times along the drive to look at drainage, tree cover, and the slope toward the water. Doris joined them near the cedar point. She knew where the old boundary stones stood beneath the snow. The property included more shoreline than the tax map made obvious from the road. A clean stretch beyond the cove connected two areas the Conservancy had already protected. Pine Hollow was the missing piece between them. Sean explained that a conservation easement wouldn't require Wanda to leave. She could keep the camp, restore the boathouse, and use the existing access. The agreement would prevent later subdivision and large-scale development. "The land remains yours," he said. "The development rights are what we acquire, and you pay for those rights." "Yes." "Then the amount matters." "It does." Sean had brought a preliminary valuation based on recent shoreline transactions, but he wouldn't make an offer until an independent review was completed. Over the next week, a surveyor confirmed the acreage and an appraiser assessed the development potential. Todd and Jenna still believed Wanda was patching a ruined camp with what little money remained in her account. Wanda didn't correct them. The formal Conservancy letter arrived by hand on Friday. Sean sat at the camp table while Wanda read it. Amy stood beside the stove. Ryan was fitting a new handrail outside, and Doris had brought a pot of vegetable soup. The Conservancy offered $1,800,000 for a permanent shoreline easement. The offer depended on clear title, final board approval, and the recorded restrictions. Wanda would retain ownership of Pine Hollow, including the camp and boathouse. She read the figure again. "Why so much?" Amy asked. Sean opened the map. "Because a private developer would pay for the chance to divide this shoreline. We're paying to remove that chance forever." Wanda looked through the window toward the lake. Eugene had understood. The leaning camp wasn't the value. The unbuilt shore was. "Does signing mean I can't repair my home?" she asked. "No. The agreement includes a residential area around the existing structures. You can rebuild within its limits, subject to normal permits. You can maintain the road, septic system, and boathouse. Can the public come onto the land? Not unless you allow it, and after I die, the restrictions remain. Whoever owns it next must honor them." Wanda closed the folder. "I want Peter to review every line. He should. I also want the cedar point left alone. No public trail. We can write that clearly." Sean left the offer with her. Ryan came inside, brushing sawdust from his coat. Wanda handed him the letter. He read the amount and sat down without removing his hat. "Eugene knew it was worth something," he said. "I don't think he knew that. He knew enough not to sell." Doris set bowls on the table. A vehicle came down the drive before anyone began eating. Todd entered without knocking. He carried a box of items from the storage unit and stopped when he saw Sean's Conservancy folder, Peter's trustee certificate, and Bradley's appraisal arranged on the table. His eyes settled on the appraisal first. "What's $340,000? No one answered quickly enough. He picked up the Conservancy letter. Wanda stood. "That's private." Todd read the first page before she took it from his hand. His face changed as he looked from the letter to the property map and then toward the lake. "This place is worth nearly $2 million? The easement is worth that. The land stays mine. And the 340, also mine." Todd stared at the floor beneath the table, then at Eugene's cane resting against the wall. For the first time, he understood that the property he'd used to frighten his mother into assisted living had given her the means to refuse him. He set the storage box down. "We need to talk as a family." Wanda gathered the documents and returned them to the waterproof case. "No," she said. "You need to decide what you do after learning this. I need to finish my soup." Todd looked at the bowls on the table. "You're choosing these people over your own son. I'm choosing lunch over another argument. This affects all of us. The house sale affected me. You didn't call a family meeting for that." Jenna hadn't come with him. Todd had driven out alone because he believed the documents might be misunderstood, exaggerated, or somehow reversible if he reached Wanda quickly enough. Now he saw 4 adults sitting comfortably in a building he'd dismissed as uninhabitable. The stove was warm. New trim framed the repaired window. Wanda's keys lay beside her bowl. He looked at Amy. "You knew?" I knew Peter was checking the trust. And you didn't tell me? It wasn't mine to tell. I'm your brother. She's our mother. Todd turned to Wanda. If you sign that easement, you're locking up the land forever. I'm protecting the shoreline. You're giving away control. I'd be paid for development rights I don't plan to use. You don't understand what a property like this could become. Sean's letter had taught him in 1 minute what Eugene had understood for years. Todd no longer saw a broken camp. He saw building lots, luxury homes, and money that could solve Jenna's debt many times over. Wanda understood the change in him because it was visible. He kept looking toward the window as though the shore had appeared only after he read the offer. You wanted me to let the county take it, she said. That was before we had all the information. You shouldn't make a decision this large without advice. I have advice. From Ryan, from Doris, from an attorney, an appraiser, and the Conservancy. Todd's mouth tightened. You've known about this for what, a week? You're recovering from surgery. You're staying in a motel and making decisions involving millions of dollars. I'm staying in a motel because you sold my home. You're proving my point. No, I'm reminding you where it started. He left the storage box and walked out. Ryan watched from the window as Todd drove away. He'll come back with paper, he said. Wanda took another spoonful of soup. Then Peter can read it. The paper arrived 4 days later. A sheriff's deputy brought it to the camp just after 10 in the morning. He was courteous, almost apologetic, and waited while Wanda put on her glasses. Todd had filed a petition asking the probate court to appoint him as Wanda's guardian and conservator. He claimed she lacked the ability to manage her health, money, and property after her injury. He asked for temporary authority to prevent her from signing the conservation easement or selling any coins until the court decided. Attached to the petition were photographs of the camp before repairs, the rehabilitation discharge plan recommending supervised living, and a statement from Jenna describing Wanda as fragile after everything she'd been through. Todd also included the Golden Pines residency agreement Wanda had never signed. Wanda read each page at the kitchen table. Ryan stood near the door. He didn't ask to see the papers until she finished. Fragile, Wanda said. That's a useful word if you want to make a person sound like glass. He used it at the hospital, too. Her hands remained steady as she passed him the petition. Todd's claims were built from real pieces. Wanda had fractured her hip. She had needed rehabilitation. She had refused assisted living. She had moved toward a building without working water. She had found unexpected property and begun discussing a large financial agreement. He'd removed the parts that made her decisions reasonable. There was no mention of the motel, Ryan's repairs, the trust attorney, the coin appraisal, or the independent conservancy review. There was no mention of selling her house without permission. Peter filed an objection that afternoon. The judge declined to give Todd immediate control. Instead, the court temporarily prohibited any transfer of Pine Hollow until an expedited hearing could be held. Wanda could continue paying ordinary expenses and repairs. The easement signing had to wait. Todd had created exactly the delay he wanted. Amy came after work with a bag of groceries and found Wanda labeling folders at the table. One folder held medical records. Another held the bank letter and house sale documents. A third held the trust, deed, appraisals, tax receipt, and correspondence with Sean. You shouldn't have to prove you're competent, Amy said. The court has to answer the petition in front of it. I'll testify. Wanda looked at her. You may have to say you went along with Golden Pines. I did. And that you thought I needed supervision. I thought you needed help. Todd turned that into supervision. Wanda closed the folder. Then tell it exactly that way. Amy sat across from her. I keep thinking about the hospital. You asked if I'd read the form. You'd worked all day. That doesn't make the answer better. No. It explains why you wanted Todd to have handled it. Amy nodded. Wanda reached across the table and pushed a stack of blank labels toward her. Write bank on one and county on another. It wasn't forgiveness. It was work that needed doing, offered to someone who had stopped pretending she hadn't made a mistake. The next complication arrived through Peter. Douglas Andrews called my office, he said over the telephone. Wanda stood beside the camp sink while the repaired water line filled a kettle. What does Douglas want? He heard Pine Hollow may be worth a substantial amount. He believes he has an inheritance claim as Eugene's eldest son. Douglas was 50 now. Eugene's son from his first marriage had lived away from Wolfboro for most of his adult life. He and Eugene had spoken rarely during the last years before Eugene died. Douglas hadn't attended the trust signing. He had no memory of the original family camp before its foreclosure. What he knew came from family stories, most of them shaped by people who were still angry. "Did you tell him about the trust?" Wanda asked. "I told him I represent you and couldn't advise him." "What did he do?" "Hired his own lawyer." Douglas filed an objection to Wanda's control of the property. He argued that Pine Hollow was ancestral Andrews land and should have been part of Eugene's estate. He asked the court to determine whether the trust had improperly excluded him. The judge added his claim to the hearing because it involved the same property and many of the same documents. Todd called Wanda that night. She let it ring twice before answering. "This has gotten out of hand," he said. "You filed it. I filed because you wouldn't slow down. You asked for control of my money and medical decisions. Temporary control. You asked to be appointed indefinitely. My lawyer used the standard form. You signed it." Todd breathed into the phone. Douglas is making this worse. He believes he has a claim. He hasn't cared about Dad's property in years. That doesn't make the trust more or less valid. If he gets a share, the land could be forced into a sale. Peter says he won't. "You're gambling everything on Peter. I'm relying on documents your father created. Dad cut Douglas out because they didn't get along. That's gonna look bad. You haven't read the trust. I've read enough." There was movement in the background. Jenna said something Wanda couldn't hear. Todd lowered his voice. "Withdraw from the easement. Let me manage the coins and taxes. I'll withdraw the guardianship petition. What happens to Pine Hollow? We hold it while we determine the best use. Development. Possibly. And Jenna's debt? That's separate. It stopped being separate when my money paid it." Todd's patience failed. "You're sitting on more than $2 million while your family is struggling." Wanda waited. He seemed to realize what he'd said only after the words were out. "There it is," she said. "I didn't mean it that way. You meant it exactly that way." She ended the call. The hearing took place the following Tuesday in the probate division of the county courthouse. The room was smaller than Wanda expected. There were no high ceilings or rows of spectators, just a judge's bench, 2 counsel tables, several wooden seats, and a clerk arranging files. Still, it was public in the way Todd wanted. Every statement would be recorded. Every accusation would carry the authority of a sworn filing. Wanda wore the blue cardigan from her discharge day. She used the aluminum cane from the parking lot to the courtroom, then folded it beside her chair. Eugene's cherry wood cane remained at Pine Hollow. Its work had already been done. Peter arranged the folders without opening them. Across the aisle, Todd sat with Jenna and an attorney named Marlene Bell. Todd wore a navy suit. Jenna wore gray and held his hand whenever anyone looked toward them. Douglas sat at a separate table with his lawyer. He resembled Eugene around the eyes, though his face was longer. When Wanda entered, he nodded but didn't approach. Judge Caroline Mercer began with Todd's petition. Marlene Bell said the case concerned safety, judgment, and the risk of irreversible financial harm. She described Wanda as a recent surgical patient who had rejected professional care, moved into a derelict structure, relied on unrelated older friends, and prepared to restrict valuable land permanently. Peter made no objection during the opening. Todd testified first. He said he'd acted because his mother's choices had become unpredictable after her fall. He said she didn't appreciate the risks of winter living, financial fraud, or pressure from people who might benefit from the property. "Who might benefit?" Marlene asked. "Ryan Woods, the Conservancy, maybe others." "Do you want your mother's assets for yourself?" "No, I want them protected." "Would you use any of her money to pay your wife's business debts?" "Not without proper authorization." The answer avoided what had already happened. Todd said Wanda forgot conversations and changed her mind. He pointed to her refusal to enter Golden Pines after a place had been secured. He described her decision to keep Pine Hollow as impulsive. He didn't mention telling her about the property only after selling her house. Jenna testified next. She said Wanda had always been proud and independent, which made it difficult for her to recognize new limitations. She described the house sale as an emergency decision made in good faith. Marlene asked whether Jenna stood to gain from control of Pine Hollow. Jenna said no. Then Douglas took the stand for his own claim. He said Pine Hollow had belonged to the Andrews family before Wanda married Eugene. He believed Eugene intended the land to remain with his children, and that excluding his eldest son from ancestral property was unfair. He admitted he hadn't seen the deed or trust. "I know what my father's family lost," he said. "I'm asking the court not to let it disappear again behind papers none of us knew existed." By the time Douglas stepped down, Todd and Jenna had sworn that Wanda's judgment couldn't be trusted, and Douglas had sworn that her ownership shouldn't stand. Peter still hadn't shown the court a single page from Eugene's files. Judge Mercer looked toward him. "Mr. Hanson," she said, "you may present Mrs. Andrews' evidence." Peter stood and carried the first folder to the clerk. "This is the original deed from 1994, the bank record showing the purchase funds, and the recorded transfer into the Pine Hollow Irrevocable Trust in 2016. Marlene Bell rose. "We haven't established that Mrs. Andrews understood any of these documents. She didn't create them," Peter said. "Eugene Andrews did, 7 years before her injury." Judge Mercer examined the deed. Peter explained that the Andrews family had lost the earlier property to foreclosure. The bank later owned it outright. Eugene's purchase in 1994 was a new transaction funded by his separate inheritance. Douglas leaned toward his attorney. Peter placed his office copy of the trust beside the original found in the boathouse. The signatures, seals, and recorded property description match. Mr. Andrews was trustee while living. Upon his death in 2019, Wanda Andrews became sole trustee and beneficiary. Pine Hollow never entered his probate estate. Douglas's attorney asked, "So, your position is that Mr. Andrews' children inherited no interest?" "That isn't merely my position. It's what the recorded documents did." Peter next submitted the physician's capacity letter Eugene obtained before signing, his office notes, and the independent appraisal from that year. Douglas had believed someone had quietly removed old family land from an estate he should have shared. Now he understood there had been no inherited land left after the foreclosure. Eugene had bought it again with his own money and placed it somewhere his will couldn't reach. His claim wasn't fraudulent, it was simply wrong. Peter moved to Todd's petition. He submitted the hospital power of attorney. This document concerns temporary medical decisions. It grants no financial authority. He then submitted the bank's letter, confirming Todd had no permission to access Wanda's account. Marlene objected that the house transaction wasn't the purpose of the hearing. "It shows why Mrs. Andrews rejected her son's financial control," Peter said. The petition calls that rejection evidence of incapacity. Judge Mercer allowed it. Amy testified next. She admitted supporting supervised care after the surgery. She also admitted failing to ask Wanda what she wanted. "Has your mother shown confusion about her property?" Peter asked. "No." "Has she forgotten the trust terms, tax deadline, appraised values, or repair costs?" "No." "Why did you change your position?" "Because I read the papers. Todd kept saying Mom was too fragile to decide. What he meant was that she wasn't making his decision." Todd stared at the table. Doris followed. She confirmed Eugene's purchase and the work he performed over 25 years. She described Wanda's repair lists, county calls, and insistence on independent advice. Peter submitted Bradley's appraisal and Sean's direct offer, along with the written easement terms preserving Wanda's home and ownership. The petitioner describes the easement as an impulsive loss of control, Peter said. It pays $1,800,000 while keeping the land intact. Mrs. Andrews asked for legal review, a protected residential area, and no public access at Cedar Point. Those are reasoned conditions. Judge Mercer looked at Todd. "Did your mother ask you for help developing Pine Hollow?" "No." "Did she ask you to manage the coins?" "No." "Did she authorize the sale of her former home?" Todd's lawyer touched his arm. Todd answered anyway. "I believed I had authority. That wasn't my question." "No." The courtroom remained quiet. Judge Mercer took a short recess. When she returned, she spoke without delaying the result. Todd's guardianship petition was denied. He hadn't shown that Wanda lacked capacity. The evidence showed the opposite. She had obtained advice, met deadlines, secured her assets, and made consistent decisions. Douglas's claim failed as well. Pine Hollow belonged to the trust, not Eugene's estate. Blood relationship didn't create ownership where the law provided none. The temporary restriction on the easement was lifted. Outside the courtroom, Douglas stood alone near the stairs. "I didn't know about the foreclosure," he said to Wanda. "Peter said you didn't. My mother always said Dad kept the family place and left me out." "He kept letters for you." Douglas looked at her. "They were in the box. Not everything was about property." Todd approached before Douglas could answer. "So that's it?" he asked. "Amy and Douglas get understanding, and I get nothing." You get boundaries, Wanda said. You won't access my accounts. You won't make medical decisions unless I ask. You'll arrange visits before coming to Pine Hollow. I'm still your son. Yes. That's why the door isn't permanently closed. Jenna waited near the exit. She didn't come closer. The house sale was settled separately. The title insurer paid Wanda the difference between the rushed price and an independent valuation. Jenna returned her commission. Todd signed a repayment agreement for the $8,000 and the other unauthorized expenses. Wanda kept the fraud affidavit unsigned. Peter kept a copy. If Todd missed payments or entered her accounts again, sentiment wouldn't delay the next step. 3 weeks later, Wanda met Sean at the camp table. Peter reviewed the final easement one last time. The residential area protected the camp and boathouse. Cedar Point remained private. The shoreline couldn't be divided or covered with large houses. Wanda signed. The first payment cleared the remaining repair bills. Most of the money went into conservative accounts under the trust. She sold only enough coins to cover immediate needs, and a gift she chose herself. Douglas came to Pine Hollow on a rainy afternoon. Wanda gave him Eugene's letters, the photograph copies, and a sealed bank envelope containing a portion of the coin proceeds. "This isn't an inheritance share," she said. The court answered that. Douglas held the envelope without opening it. Then why? "Because Eugene saved words for you and waited too long. I won't repeat that part." Douglas read the first letter at the kitchen table. Wanda didn't watch his face. She made coffee and let him decide how much silence he needed. Todd's visits remained less certain. Wanda didn't forgive him because a judge denied his petition. He made his first 3 repayment installments on time. On his 4th visit, he called before coming and waited on the porch until Wanda opened the door. That was enough progress for one afternoon. Work on the boathouse continued through spring. Ryan repaired the pilings with a local crew, then built cabinets from pine boards Eugene had stored in the rafters. Wanda chose drawer heights she could reach without bending too far. Amy painted the sleeping room a warm cream and installed bright lights along the path. Doris brought cuttings for window boxes. Sean returned to mark the protected boundary, then stayed for stew. The old camp became a guest cottage. The boathouse became Wanda's home. She kept one section of Eugene's workbench untouched. Ryan taught weekend classes there for adults who wanted to repair locks, sharpen tools, or make something useful with their hands. Wanda handled bookings and kept coffee ready. If stories about reclaiming dignity after family abandonment matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. On the first warm evening of summer, Wanda set 4 plates on the table while the lake moved softly beneath the open windows. Ryan carried in bread. Amy brought salad. Doris arrived with flowers from Cedar Point. Wanda switched on the lamp beside the door. Eugene's cherrywood cane rested beneath it, the brass collar polished and the hollow shaft empty. Wanda's own house key sat safely in her pocket. Before joining the others, she touched the key once, heard their voices around her table, and turned the lock that made the place home.